Welcome, everybody. This is Rick DiClemente on Astrology Unplugged. Tonight, we're going to be doing something really interesting, talking about quantum physics and all kind of related subjects. As you know, a lot of people have seen that fabulous movie called What the Bleep. It's now free on YouTube, in case you can't track it. They even have an extended version. It's highly recommended. And if you've not seen it, it will blow your mind in terms of what you think is real, and what you think are dimensions, etc. And today we're going to be having our guest on that's going to talk with us about that, and he'll be addressing your questions. As you know, this show is 2/3 the time about astrology-related items, and tonight it's on a subject that we love to entertain, which is not only physics, but how the world of physics is meeting up with the world of spirit. So I want to welcome our guest tonight, Lee Robinson from Pittsburgh area. How you doing, Lee?
I'm good. How you doing, Rick?
Doing very good. And I want to let people know that Liza and I, when our book first came out, we did a nice talk about 6-7 years ago, invited to Lee's group and talked with them. And Lee started out as a What the Bleep type of group, and he has expanded. And I would like for you to explain to us what those two groups are, Lee, and then we'll get into more what you want to talk about.
All right. So my name is Lee Robinson, and I with a few friends, started the Bleep group based on the movie and documentary, whatever you want to call it, film, What the Bleep Do We Know? So it's actually a Bleep group, and we started out as the Pittsburgh Bleep group. And then later, maybe just a few years back, maybe like 5 years back, 6 years back, we were asked to take on any orphaned IONS members in Pittsburgh. And there had been maybe 3 groups, I guess. And now we are called the Pittsburgh Bleep IONS group. And if you look at our mission, I don't know if Rick sent it out, but you'll see our mission. And I always say at the end of our mission, visit the one IONS group, visit the one Bleep group near you. Okay, that's basically how we got started. And like I said, I was inspired by the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? We had watched it, and it helped me through some experiences and some awarenesses. Okay, I can't hear you now. I lost you.
My fault. Okay. What astounds me is how long you've been going in this world of new spiritual flags have been unfolded. You guys have been at this quite a while. It's really interesting, and I think that's a really good statement how your group is running, etc., and the kind of people you have, because spiritual and physics, those two worlds are combining in so many ways, and so many people are hanging out their shingles. And I know when you guys watch this movie, What the Bleep, you suspend all your disbelief before you watch it. It stars that actress named Marlene Matlin, and she does a really fine job. And a lot of top physicists are interviewed in the movie. Okay, then I know that. Tell us about that that astronaut that got involved with the beginning of IONS and what IONS is about.
Okay, so IONS was basically founded by Edgar Mitchell. And Edgar Mitchell, I think, was the 11th astronaut to walk on the moon. And what had happened with the astronauts and the engineers and the scientists that worked on those space shots and the sending rockets and satellites to all these different orientations in space and to the moon, was that they would come back with experiences that were not scientifically quantifiable or qualifiable. And they would talk about these things on the side. And then they started to meet for lunch, and they started to meet informally to talk about things like out-of-body experiences, having the feeling of that everything is one and that they were integrated with everything. and everything was the same thing. And seeing actually UFOs and having telepathic experiences. And these were, again, the astronauts, engineers, and the scientists that worked on the space shots. So Edgar Mitchell basically was one of those people, and he said, hey, there's something here, and I'm going to start an organization that will go out and investigate some of these things that we're talking about, because we were there. I mean, yeah, we're scientists and we believe in, the facts and the math, and that's what helped us get to the moon and back. But there's something else. And he started IONS, and IONS is located in, as you saw right there, in California. And he recently died, probably about 2 years ago. And he died on the, let's see, let me see how I could say this. He died on the night before his historic moonwalk.
On the eve.
On the eve, right,
wow.
of his moonwalk. And I think he was 84, I think.
Well, that's incredibly significant. Eves are very powerful. Like if you have a birthday the eve before your birthday, you better be very careful driving.
Okay.
How many times do you hear on the news, tomorrow would have been the anniversary to the date on this date?
Well, that's true.
And the 84th year is extremely significant because Uranus goes around the circle in 84 years, and when it comes back and returns, it's very common that the personality feels finished. You just feel done. It's not a depressing thing. They're free to go on if they want, but a lot of people feel like, I've done what I came here for. And of course, it's the planet of heavy science. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we use the movie as our flagship inspiration. What the bleep do we know? We use that movie, and we show it, at least once a year, and we discuss it. And IONS actually supported the production of that movie. So if you watch the movie to the end, you'll see IONS credits on that movie. Now,
Lee, I want to get into a lot of things that you do. Can you give people, I know this is impossible, but can you give people a 5-minute explanation of what the bleep is? What's that movie about?
Okay. And that's a challenging question.
It's a hard one.
Because it's just like the group. It's about everything. And when you do a film, you can't get into detail in everything. So in the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know, they hit a lot of topics. And I think it's about an hour and 25 minutes or something like that long. But they hit a lot of topics, and they do it in a fun way. And it's an entertaining movie. It has a whole bunch of stuff in it. But they hit on reality. They hit on our dimensions. They hit on how we're connected. They hit on the observer effect. They hit on the wave particle theories of how things are waves and they become particles.
Uncertainty principle.
Yes. And well, it's not uncertain until you make it certain. That's the thing. and they hit on, they talk about the quantum field and how everything originates in the quantum field. But they also talk about how things are as below, things below as above as below.
That's where we're going to connect with astrology. That's perfect.
And they talk about that in the way of how things happen, but they also talk about it in the way of your emotions and your internal physical workings as a human being, and how your hormones and your peptides and all that stuff go straight through and they create your reality.
Well, that I just happened to watch 1 minute of it, and there's a 2.5 hour version out there. It's extended, and I saw a scene that I'd never seen before, where they put an audio tape into a safe, and the tape they put in the safe was of certain patterns that I'm not going to make it scientifically recorded to an audio tape. And they had these people send their thought waves to it, and when they pulled the tape back out, the tape was different. And it wasn't that they changed the tape, they changed the experience that was happening in the past.
Right.
Your whole sense of time changes when you watch this. So anyhow,
yeah.
How did you, that's a good to get your toe wet because it's so complex of a film. But how did you, what were you doing before Bleep hit your world?
What was I doing before what?
Bleep hit your world.
So I had some physical experiences. I had some close to death experiences, and I had some time to just figure out and sit down and think. You know, I was in a situation in my home life where I could actually take some time. And someone had mentioned this movie, and I had never seen it. I went to see it, and I related to everything in it. You know,
well, what were you?
I actually rented it. It came out in 2004.
I know you're a saxophone player, and you play with a jazz band. What were you doing with your life before this?
Oh, I'm a musician. Oh, yeah. I basically play saxophones. I lead my own groups. I'm a jazz player. I play everything. I play classical, you know.
But that's your main income?
That's what I do, yeah. And I teach, you know, I teach privately, yeah.
So what came along and hit you with, we got to start a Bleep group? I mean, it's pretty heavy.
Well, you know, again, you know, I had some personal experiences. I had basically one of those awakenings, you know, like you said, something comes along and hits you, you know. And what I realized was that I was lucky because I didn't wait for the 2x4 to come. Or
it's called a planet.
Or the planet to hit me.
That's what it was. I want to do your chart someday.
Okay. You know, I wanted to join a group, you know, and I went to the website. They basically said, you know, put your name and your zip code in, and we'll send you what group is located near you. And
very good.
And I got a note back from somebody in Philadelphia who has a Bleep group. And basically they said that we're kind of far away, and we would love for you to come visit us, but we're pretty far. You may want to consider starting your own group. And I'm going like, I'm not doing that. I'm not starting a group. That's not me, you know.
And that was 2004, that movie.
What's that?
That movie's 14 years old. 15.
Yes, it is. And actually, when you look at it, it looks very relevant. But, you know, that was my start, you know, and I walked away from it for 2 weeks. And then I sat back down and said, well, let's go back and let's see what you have to have in place to have a group. So basically, they had just a few basic things, you know. They said, send a resume, let us know what your experience is, real short, and send it in. So
what are you guys doing now in the group?
What we're doing now? You mean like what's happening?
I'm sure over time it changes.
Oh, yeah.
Where's the group focusing on now?
Well, right now in this segment, and we've had several of these in a row, we're talking about dimensions. We're talking about dimensions and awareness. And that's, you know, what I said I would probably talk about. We're talking about dimensions and, you know, a conscious awareness. And you look at those things and you go, well, like, how does that work? You know? And so we watched a few films and we talked about it, and there's an app that you can actually get that I recommended to some of the people that talks about the fourth dimension. And none of the stuff is like heavy duty stuff. So
I watched that movie. It was pretty heavy duty. When they got past the fourth one, I started going.
Well, see, that's the thing. You're trying to understand it. You don't have to understand it, you know, because there are infinite dimensions. You know, it's like your car. You know, how many people drive a car? Raise your hand. I can see you. Everybody drives. How many people ride a bike? Well, that's the same thing. You know, so some people get a car, like maybe me and this guy right here. We'll get a car. We want to look under the hood. We want to see how many cylinders it has, and you know what kind of a computer management system and how much horsepower. But a lot of people just want to stick the key in there. They never look under the hood. They just want to make sure they can get from point A to B. That's all. It's the same with this all this reality stuff. You don't have to like get under the hood. Some of us like to get under the hood. but we're all in the same reality.
So what are you finding? What are you finding in your research that's closing the gap with spiritual understanding?
One of the things I find is the quantum field, the quantum physics. Scientists are a little more open, not totally, and I don't want to be biased. If there's a scientist out there, I would like for him to chime in. But, scientists come from a whole different philosophy. And right now in our culture, they are not totally permitted to cross over.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. If you read some of David Wilcock's books, you'll find that scientists are basically doing science to hold credibility for themselves, to hold credibility for the universities that they teach and work for and do research for, and the companies that they do research for. Scientists aren't totally doing science anymore. Right. They are harboring credibility and funding, because once you cross that line, your credibility is gone as a scientist, and that's where IONS comes in. IONS basically set up a research facility, and they have other things, I'll tell you about them later, but they set up a research facility to investigate and do research on, our interconnectedness. They do research on consciousness and try to qualify and quantify it as much as anybody can. They do research on meditation and the effects of meditation. They are privately funded. They're not connected. So the scientists and researchers there are not worried about losing their credibility, and obviously they're dedicated.
Well, that's fabulous. I know in the film there's some incredible physicists talking, and they're just sitting there with this look of incredulity. They're blowing their own mind while they're talking about it.
Right.
Well, how did you guys? When I first talked to you about doing this, I don't understand clearly why your focus is on dimensions. Explain that.
That just happened to be right now.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Well, this is where I'm coming from, and this is what I tell the group. If you expand your awareness, and this is one of the things we never really talked about. Part of it is in the film, What the Bleep Do We Know? They talk about dimensions. Dr. Quantum talks about them a little bit. In the big film, the 6-hour film, he talks about it a little more. You don't know about the 6-hour film. But so dimensions can be symbolic of anything, So basically, if you look at dimensions and you get your mind into looking at how would it be? How do things possibly react in other dimensions? How do other dimensions interact with the dimension that we live in, which is basically the third dimension? All those questions that you ask, and all those questions that you ask yourself and others, expands your awareness. Just for the fact that that there's a fourth dimension or an eighth dimension or a millionth dimension, expands your awareness. So that is now included in your reality, which also expands your consciousness. Things that you don't know about are not in your reality.
Right.
So your conscious level stops at that point. I'm not going to say it's limited because there are other areas, but it stops at that point. But once you realize that something exists, then that expands your reality.
Well, when we talk about Schrodinger's cat in the box, we talk about what you were saying, it's not real until you witness this with quantum mechanics. And I know what happened astrologically, but it seems like around the year 2011, there was a very specific event that coincided with this famous physicist meeting in Brussels in 1927 called the, what was it called, 1927? I forget the name of the city, but that's where Planck was and all the famous physicists that came about and made quantum a word. But in 2011 is when I believe astrologically it showed us it's here to stay.
It came in, right.
Yeah, it's here to stay. It's here to be established in the public. I shared this with one of the top astrologers in the world. He wasn't sure, and I think that's just because he did not research it deeply enough. So you'll remember in January of 2011 was this freak out across the world of my sun sign isn't my sun sign anymore. And there's 13 signs now. And what are we going to do? Was it not Stockholm? No, it was in Brussels. But anyhow, the point was it has come to become a household word now.
Right.
So I want to ask you, when you got this physics showing us that what you see, it's not there until you see it, and just the fact of looking at it changes it, how is that affecting us as living human beings in the psychology realm?
Wow, you're going pretty deep. Okay, so there are a couple things that I know you have to have in place. And one is you're aware that you create your reality, because that's basically what you're saying. You know, once you're aware that you are creating all this stuff, you know, I'm creating you, you're creating me, we created all these people, they created us, you know, and that's kind of incomprehensible, but that's basically what it is. And we're one thing. We're actually one thing. So the human being and the human brain has to walk this duality thing. You know, there's this, and then there's, well, I'm just here by myself kind of feeling like I'm the only one. I'm the only one, because we think that there's a border between all of us. And something just went out on me.
All right.
Oh, that's you. Okay. So psychologically, it doesn't have to affect you at all. What I think that gets you through everything is your intention. So if you're asking questions, and you're asking questions about your existence and who you are and what you are, that's going to bring you into your internal, yourself. Like, what am I doing? What am I really here for? And that's hopefully going to lead you to creating some intention and finding a purpose, or finding your purpose.
So in other words, people are becoming more confident that they can use their intention,
right,
to get past just about anything. Right,
and they become more conscious. So once you realize that if I say something bad about that person, that's me that I'm talking about. That person is a reflection of me.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If they're angry at me and I'm angry at them, then there's some things we have in common. You know, those usually are challenges that we haven't resolved in ourselves.
Well, one of the things I found, and I've shown this group this showing of David Hawkins, who's dead now. He died at 84. He did this talk about quitting eating cookies, that you're addicted to cookies, and you eat 64 cookies a day, and the way you end up stopping is not by saying, I'm going to stop, but by becoming aware of. And what I'm trying to say is, in the last 20, 30 years, we've been glibly throwing that word around, awareness, consciousness. It really is that simple. Are you aware of it? And
Right.
he's showing you that to quit eating so many cookies, or whether cigarettes or heroin, whatever it is, you just need to become more aware of how much you're doing it.
Right.
Don't try to change it. Just become aware, and we see how much power is invested right in the word awareness.
Right. And some people look at awareness as, you know, this is another topic inside what we're talking about, as a way to enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother thing. But, you know, as reality is, everything is the way it is, and everything is the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And this is another thing that we as human beings can't get to. There is nothing to do.
Right.
There is nothing to do.
Course in Miracles. Exactly.
Yeah. So
we've been talking about that.
So what gets you through everything is your intention. you change things by being who you are. When your awareness increases, when your conscious level expands, you have changed everything around you. You've changed the guy walking past you on the street. Everything's different. You think
Well, go ahead.
You think the people that you relate to on a daily basis, or people on the street that you see as strangers, have changed, but it's actually you are changing everything.
That reminds me of Wayne Dyer talking about seeing a woman in a grocery store and the little kids with her, and her kid's having a fit, and the mom's yelling at her, and the mom's real stressed, and the kid's crying. And Wayne Dyer says, instead of going up and lecturing the woman, stop hitting that kid or whatever, he would just go stand next to the mother and send her vibes like, let's improve your day. How are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And within seconds, the kid stops crying.
Yeah. There's nothing to do, but it's who you are. It's who you are being, or
I wanted to ask you, when you started playing sax, how does that compare now to you playing sax today? And I'm not talking about your technique getting better, but I'm talking about seeing yourself as not the player.
Well, that's an interesting subject for me personally, because people saw me when I did not see me.
Right.
So I was always, as they say, I was always channeling this music, and they would ask me about playing, and they would ask me about my improvisation. I would say, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. And then gradually over time, people would say, like, well, when you're playing, you're like in a zone. You're like channeling something. You're bringing something through that horn. And how are you doing that? I'm going like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then one day I heard myself play. This is kind of weird. But one day I was practicing, and I had done some personal development and took some courses. And I came home that weekend, and I picked up my horn to practice, and I played like one note, man, and I just busted out crying. It's unbelievable. It was one of those epiphanies. It's like, wow,
So you're repeating what the holy books say. You're repeating what the holy books say. And then we see some people trying to put a wall up between our country and another country and think that mindset's going to work. And it's the opposite. Take down the walls.
Right.
But we have to arrive at it. Don't you see that with the world? I know astrologically I do. We're seeing the destruction of so many things, and the institutions crumbling. At the same time, the spiritual rise is happening, like a seesaw. Don't you see that here?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's sort of hard to comprehend because you don't know where each one is going. We don't
know. We don't.
But yeah, there are more awarenesses for everything that people say is not working in the world. There's like a whole nother faction of things that are working, and those things have been amplified as well. So when people become more conscious and aware and considerate and know that they're connected, well, the spiritual side is, and I use the word spiritual and energetic, energy and energetic kind of interchangeably. That side increases. That side has been on the increase for a long time, and except that the other stuff gets more press. That's the difference,
Okay.
But if you stop watching TV and don't watch CNN and Fox and all those other channels, after a while you'll be able to feel what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you won't have to look at the news for 3 or 4 days, and you'll have a feeling like, I know what's going on. And you turn on the news and you go like, wow, that's not surprising.
You can hear it in the lingo. You can hear it in the language. People are unconsciously or consciously picking up that we are one, and I really think the turning point was January 2011, and then look at December 2012.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really amazing that these physical phenomena that you're speaking of were somehow entertained by the Mayans long ago.
Yes, the 26,000 year cycle you're talking about. Yeah. And
Astrology,
that
astrology's on the same clock.
and 2012, 21,
Right.
2012 was the first time we
Mhm.
walked the labyrinth. The group walked the labyrinth in Homestead, which is a 70-foot labyrinth, about 70 feet in diameter, 68 feet. And then right after that, the people that actually maintain it and have it on the property and maintain the property ask us if we wanted to kind of like chaperone and promote the labyrinth. I'm going like, well, we just walked it once, but yeah, we'll take it over. You know, we'll be custodians and we'll promote it. So that was interesting. And it was interesting also when I'm talking about, you know, press and promo, that they printed a picture the next day of us walking that labyrinth in the snow, because there was like 3 inches of snow. We tried to put up, you know, illuminary stuff and candles, and the wind was blowing. It was ridiculous, you know. But there were like 30 people down there, you know, 28 people down there. And it was cold. It was windy. It was 28 degrees. The wind chill was probably like, I don't know, 15 or something. But we walked it. But the local press published a picture of us walking it, and they put under it, it was completely in error, but they knew something. They said, you know, people are walking the labyrinth, the Pittsburgh Bleep Group walking the labyrinth for the end of days, end of time.
Yeah.
Okay, they know something, but they have it wrong, you know.
They have it wrong.
Yeah. So.
Well, when you see what's going on, you're really seeing the Newtonian world, the physical world, pushed to its limit. It just can't go anymore because it's not real, and it's based on faulty science. It's based on science that was true and necessary at its time, but it's like the quantum world is just shifting, like pushing the other one out of the frame. Don't you find?
Well, yeah, and for a lot of people who look at that and look at science and say like, well, you know, science is the real stuff, and you guys are talking about airy fairy stuff.
That's flip.
You have to go way back, right? Because all that stuff had energy and spirit involved in it. The alchemists before chemistry, they had that. You know, there are like 2 or 3 other things I can't think of right now. But we'll use the alchemists before chemistry. We'll use the herbologists before medicine and pharmaceuticals. You know, think about that. All that stuff was there before people like DiClemente came along and made a deal with the Vatican and said, hey, instead of beheading us for saying like the earth goes around the sun, how about we take care of that stuff and you guys take care of the spiritual stuff, and then we'll just set up a truce like that. Yeah, right. We'll just separate this stuff out, you know. But that also started the separation and the fragmentation of our cultural reality.
Well, what do you think is going to happen since the spirit side, I'll call it, has gained the upper hand? It's just with everybody you're talking to, people are learning, they're meditating, they're in groups, they're on the labyrinth, they're doing yoga. There's just so many things. You see, I mean, when I do my readings for people, it used to be they wanted to know, when's my boyfriend and girlfriend coming? And now they want to know what's their purpose. They want to know, what's my purpose? Something I can feel. What do I feel? And that's a hard reading to do. What do you see is happening in that realm?
Well, again, you know, you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. You know, people are actually getting closer to the one. They're actually getting closer to the one, and people know that we're connected, and they know that we have an effect on the planet, and they know that this is they come to the realization that this is the first time in history of man that man actually admits that he is affecting the ecology of the planet. Before that, it was just the planet, and the planet is just there. You know,
So,
we don't have anything that we can't hurt this planet. We can't do anything damaging because it's so massive. Go ahead.
well, one of that was just saying two things are separate. That's all I was saying. But what I was thinking about is people are still arguing about the carbon and the climate. They don't realize what we're doing psychically to the planet. The
Right.
planet is an entity. And like you were saying, the way we think of the planet, the way we see ourselves as inhabitants is much more destructive to the planet than the carbon.
Right. Right. And yeah, we are part of the planet. I mean, we're part of the how it works. Just like the water is part of the magnetism and the energy, and just like the core, molten core is part of how it rotates and how the magnetism of the planet works.
What are you finding? Because you're probably surrounded by a whole bunch of interesting people in your group. What are some of the surprises you're finding amongst your group of membership?
When you say surprising, like, what are you referring to? Like,
What are they bringing to the table that's just knocking you over? Like, wow.
Well, I got to say, I'm probably, one of the most grateful and blessed people on the planet. I started this group. I was a little apprehensive, and actually, I get the benefit. I think like more than anybody in the group, because I research all this stuff, before we have the presentations. And, I mean, it has boosted my awareness is like amazingly. I mean, every day. The thing about this group that makes it different is that people who are already sort of like really aware, really awake, and they have abilities. All these people have abilities. It's unbelievable. You come to the group and you go like, well, this person does Reiki and they do this and this and that and that, and this person does this and they channel, and this person does this, but they're all like members. They just come, for the same reasons that I come for, and this person heals, this person can heal, this person can see this, and nobody's ego is like out there on the table. It's pretty amazing. And this was the way it was almost from the beginning. So,
yeah, I should have asked you to get me a birthday and birth time of your first meeting.
Yeah.
That would tell us a lot.
Yeah.
By the way, all you folks out there, don't laugh at this. Anytime you start anything, not your next breath, or you open up a shop, you buy a car, you get divorced, you get married, mark down the date and write down the time. Because you can sense it. You can sense the time. Then people say to me, well, is it a store? Did you open your door? There's one for when you made your first dollar. There's one when you did a handshake at the bank. Write down all those times. Because what you'll find out is you might have 4 birth charts for your business, and they're all true. Robert, the first time he picked up a hammer and hit the anvil to make his knives.
Mm-hmm.
And those 4 birth charts will all be true, but after time, if you watch them, like maniacs like me do, you'll see that one of those charts really holds the truth. So just for your note, because sometimes you're running a business and 4.5 years later, something weird happens, you can't figure it out, you got the chart to take to an astrologer.
Oh, yeah.
Extremely valuable.
Yeah. And I have to agree that there's something there. I mean, I've had some very interesting things happen in my life. And one of them is that one of the main things is that it seems like as a person that goes through the world, I'm usually like the only African American. I'm the only, and it's interesting when you come to the group, you'll see African Americans, but you'll see mostly people of other backgrounds, and they're going like, well, how do you get to lead these people? I'm going like, I don't know how I get to lead these people, but that's the deal. That's what I do. When I had
we all came out of Kenya, didn't we?
What's that?
We all originated in Kenya.
Oh yeah, we came out of Africa somewhere.
Yeah, they forget that.
Well, we were seated there.
Tell me, this really interests me. I don't want to glibly talk about this. what does it mean about these new dimensions? How do you sense these? What does it mean to us?
Okay, so there are a lot of people who have abilities that cross dimensions. So if you're talking about, for instance, if you're talking about speaking to a loved one that passed on years ago,
Right.
that's giving you, well, that's a different dimension.
Yeah.
That's not this dimension of reality. You know, now spirit and energy have not come together to say like, well, if you're talking to the dead, then that's the 8th dimension. You know, we don't know what the number is. We just know that it's not this reality.
Right.
That you have to go through some communication transfer or person to make that communication. So it's somewhere else.
Is this parallel to what Hawkins wrote about in his first book, Power versus Force? He called the field. Is this parallel to what he called attractor fields?
Ooh, that I don't know that. I don't know that term.
Sounds to me like they're one and the same. Like you're explaining it. In one dimension, you attract certain things. In another dimension, you don't attract it at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very similar.
I see what you're saying. So yeah, so then you talk to different people. They have and different people who have abilities. They have access to different realms. Mm-hmm. So even if you have a dream, you know, a dream is a different kind of reality. It's not the one that you choose to be in. We all chose to be in this one. You know, it's very hard for us to maintain a reality somewhere else and not be here. Mm-hmm. If we're going to maintain a reality somewhere else, we are not here. Think about that.
And then when we have deja vus, they're accurate, they're pinpointed, and it scares us so much, we just forget about them.
Yeah.
Like they weren't real, but they were real.
Well, they're real. They're real in the sense that, oh boy, now you're getting way down there. So you're talking about the time thing. And
yeah, the time thing, right?
When you talk about time,
right?
Time is a man-made construct.
Yeah.
Time is not what you would consider a solid, real kind of thing. I mean, I'm taking real out of the reality that we're talking about. Time is a man-made construct. So, and time is based on motion. It's based on motion, and just like what you do, it's based on the motion of the celestial bodies. It's not really like time. They put the name time on it because it looks like it's consistent. It goes around and it comes back at this time. But the further and further you get into space, say like everybody that's listening is able to lift themselves up, go out into space, into the darkness of space, and not be able to see this planet or the moon and just see lights everywhere. And you sit there in space, safely floating, nice and warm. And guess what happens? Nothing. Nothing moves, nothing happens. There's no time.
Oh.
Get it?
Yeah, so it's closely tied to our sense of space.
And motion. We detect motion, but there's actually no time. So what people who are aware and what Eckhart Tolle and everybody else tells you is there's only now. There's only now.
Well, that reminds me of people who have like they have their life threatened in the alley, and the guy has a knife on them, and they say their life flashed before them, and within 10 seconds, it seemed like an eternity, they say.
Right, man.
The whole sense of time completely changes.
Right, and just like in your dream, you can witness lifetimes of experiences in a dream that lasts only like 10 minutes or less, or 3.
I wonder how long they really do last. They seem like a long time.
When you're in it, it does. But then you wake up and you look at the clock. You say, "Well, I went to bed at 11. It's only like midnight." You know.
And then one thing that amazes me is how we perceive it. And
right.
It doesn't matter what anybody else sees. For us, it's real. And another thing I was thinking,
and that's part of the consciousness right there. What you said is the key to the oneness. So we are basically here to experience life. Everything goes back to the one, the source, the he, she, it, God, Gaia, whatever you want to call it. We have individual experiences which tend to make us think that we are separate, but we're having individual experiences that go into the greater consciousness, because somewhere, possibly, and I've had this happen, somewhere somebody's having a similar dream, or they had the same idea. I mean, look at the when scientists were inventing things. Most of the inventions that we have, modern inventions, came about when? In like between late 1800s and 1920 or something. And there were so many innovations. And if you look at those statistics, you'll find out that some scientists had invented something in this part of the planet, and another scientist invented the same thing almost at the same time. They didn't know each other. They invented the same thing. That happened more than probable.
100th monkey.
Yes. Yeah, the 100th monkey. That happened more than probable. So that information is coming from the greater consciousness and the energy and of our existence as one. Just like, somebody steps on your toe and you feel it up here.
What do you think? Don't you, number one, don't you think a lot of people are suffering now, not because their paycheck is smaller, but because they're picking up the global pain, they're picking up the collective pain. They're just feeling it, they're sensing it.
I think again, that is a product of becoming more aware, and there are people who are more sensitive, and there are people who are more empathic in the way of taking on and feeling stuff. Then when you take on and feel something, your internal filters start to interpret it for you. Right. And a lot of that interpretation goes back into your life experience. Like, how were you treated as a child? Oh, well, I feel guilty about what's happening in the world. Well, because when you were, 6 years old and, you were sent out to get the water for the family and you dropped the bucket on the way in and they needed the water. Now you feel guilty about everything, That's just an example. I mean, I'm not saying it happened.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I often think of Karen. Karen is a really fine energy worker in Florida, very advanced. And I can go back 20 years in my astrology, and I showed how we were going to start getting, especially when was Saturn going through Virgo, we were getting all these energy workers. Everybody in the world wanted to be an energy worker. They wanted to do Reiki. Everybody wanted to do all these different sensing of energies. And I knew it was true, and it's real, and it is today. But I could see that fading. I could see that was going to be upped by intention. Now it's becoming all intention, as it always was. And I wonder, Karen, I'll ask you, do you see in your work, Karen, that I'm sure you're still thinking along the energy level, and the energetic bodies are real. But do you find yourself starting to go up an octave towards intention?
I think the way it's changed for me is it's become more spiritual.
Okay.
I never put my hands on anyone without praying. I didn't care, since I ever started, because I can't change anyone.
Right.
I can only be a conduit. But the spiritual intention is getting higher, and I go far deeper. And I know so much more when I first put my hands on them. I'm even getting to where I talk to people on the phone. I was talking to a woman today in Missouri, and she was talking about her granddaughter, and I told her exactly what was going on.
Oh, really?
I didn't think twice about it. It was really bizarre. And I just spelled it out to her. And I didn't, it was not a conscious, but my intention is and always has been to, so it's a much higher octave because I'm far more sensitive.
Well, and also I've told so many people who are just starting to read, don't worry about what you say. Don't worry about it. I mean, be civil, but your intention, people can pick up your intention. It will shape your words for you. And by the way, if any of you ever got into some of the books by Dr. Wayne Dyer, I really recommend the one he wrote called Power of Intention. Because he talks about there's no Big Bang. There was no Big Bang. The Big Bang is God's intention to come into being. It's a constant wanting to come into being. And it's really difficult to talk about, but it sounds to me like this power of intention is really at the heart. Thank you, Karen. It's really at the heart of what Lee's doing. Did you want to say something?
Really, when I went through nursing school in 1981, 82, back in there, I was taught, they called it healing touch in the healthcare field, but I was taught intention.
Good.
And I can tell you the nursing school I went to, even though it was a community college, was thought of higher than any of the four-year colleges in the state. I mean, I've had people say, you went, there, yeah. And like it was some great something or other, but that's how I was taught.
Well, you can also notice that now by the way people have changed their prayers. In the 50s and 60s, was, I'll be good, I'll make a deal with you. If you make that happen, I'll do it. Now it's changing.
Right.
If it's your intent. If it's your intention.
Right. And people are realizing, whether they define it or not, that they are working in partnership, with the God, he, she, it, the source, the energy. You're working in partnership. It's not you're not looking at it to be a paternal or maternal force that does something for you. You are actually part of it, just like you're creating your own reality in partnership with the same source. Now you're taking on responsibility. So the difference is intention basically says that I'm taking responsibility. Before that, you're not, individuals were not taking responsibility. And there's still a lot of people in the world still operating a lot like that. People don't want to take responsibility. But when just like in the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know, one of the speakers says, once you realize you're creating your own reality, that puts a responsibility squarely in your lap. And people don't want to be responsible.
That reminds me of a passage where Carlos is with Don Juan, and Carlos says to Don Juan, his teacher, he says, sometimes I just really mess myself up. And Don Juan turned to him and said, why? Why? Why would you do such a thing? But it's just fascinating because you're seeing the old church mentalities dying. One where...
Not only that, you're seeing the churches die.
Well, yeah, the church is dying in a lot of ways, but we must remember the value of comradeship and fellowship. It's wonderful, and the intention that's there. But we want more. We don't want to just watch the guy up at the front holding up a host. We want to experience too. We're all one of us.
And that's part of what's happening. You realize you have the same abilities.
That's right.
That anybody else has. You have God in you. You have that same.
I'll never forget the day I walked in the doorway of the Vatican. And if you've ever been there, there are the humongous panels on the left and right. Go up 20, 30, 40 feet with just the names of the engineers. Not everybody, but just the engineers who built the place. So I quickly started seeing whips on people's backs and people carrying heavy loads. And I had a very mixed feeling there, you know, appreciating how beautiful it was and getting sad also by all the sweat that was put into it.
Right.
So anyhow, I can leave the videotape rolling for us, which I'm going to do. And if before we get to questions for you directly, Lee, is there something you would like to discuss?
Well, you know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I can discuss. I'll probably do more discussion in the questions, you know.
Okay. All right.
That's sort of how the group operates. We have a presenter, but a lot of the learning and a lot of the experience happens in the discussions after and during.
Well, it sounds like you're going to be picking up Marilyn because she's just down the street from you. Okay, everybody, feel free if you would like to unmute yourself. We want to ask our guest a question about what he knows, what he's experienced, what he's heard. So it's open to you now if you would like. Even people down in Texas. How are you doing? How are you doing, Kim? Did you like that video from Nick?
I loved Nick's video. I just love Nick. I just love you. I mean, and being here tonight when I saw Lee, I don't really care who was going to be here. Okay. I just feel so good to be here.
Well, we love you, and you're welcome every week. Thank you. Erica's got her hand raised. Thank you very much. Erica, go ahead. I'm trying to unmute you. Okay, you're on for a question for Lee.
I wonder if that's why hypnosis works so well.
Sure.
Because it is intention after all, no?
Sure.
I think part of it is intention and part of it is the person being open to his subconscious being open, you know, and coaxed to being open.
I want to add something right here, Lee.
Yeah.
You touched on a minute ago, and I think it's unbelievably valid. We've been talking so long about this big Pluto era that we're in, and it's just starting. Okay? And it really comes down to one word. One word, astrologically, what's going on is responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Lee's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
If you look around with a neutral eye and you see some people who are going over the edge, it's very sad, it's very karmic. But you look and you ask yourself, honestly, have they been taking responsibility for their life? A lot of people I find astrologically, they want you to be responsible for them.
Right.
Those people are not going to do well.
Well, and that's the same with a lot of people who ask for, you know, your help and readings and go to the doctor and everything else. They want somebody else to be responsible. But if you really get centered and you really get into your zone, you can actually feel what's happening with yourself. You can actually go inside and actually heal yourself. And you can actually go even further and you can actually change your DNA now because things have sped up. You know, things have changed. They're not like they used to be. So
well,
you have a lot of power.
One of the things I think that's really helping is that Jung's work is becoming much more known and accepted. And Jung is teaching us so intention to accept our dark side. Mm-hmm. And before, that's one of the reasons we didn't want responsibility, because we couldn't possibly say it was okay to have this dark side that I do, the shadow side. Mm-hmm. And the more you accept the shadow side, the rest of it becomes easier. Marta has her hand raised. Marta, you're on.
Hi.
You can ask your question now with Lee.
Yeah, I'm wondering about people that are very manipulative.
Yeah.
What are you wondering?
Same story.
Getting caught in like little traps that they lay.
You be responsible for me, don't you? I want you to be
for me, correct?
I don't want it.
So one of the things is that, you know, we do attract what we vibrate on.
Okay.
And that's almost like, well, you know, I keep having the same relationships over and over and they don't work out. so if you are seeing manipulation, then some of that energy is your energy, and some of that is that you're vibrating on that level. That's why you recognize that, you know.
Right. So it's a mirror.
And then there's a choice, you know. So one of the things that I think that people, you know, I try to keep things pretty simple. The biggest power, the largest power, the most power that you have as an individual on the planet is probably something you never thought of.
Wow.
It's choice.
Choice.
And you have to be conscious to make conscious choices. But if you run into a situation where things aren't working out, well, you made a choice. You said, no, I didn't make that choice. You know, you have a president that you're not in line with, and you say, well, I didn't vote, but you made a choice. You know, you still made a choice.
Marta, I did a reading for a young lady yesterday, and for an hour I went over in the gentlest of fashions. She wanted to know why she kept having bad relationships. I kept saying, it's what you want. You keep choosing.
Right.
And she said, no. At the end of the hour, she went, that's exactly what I'm doing. She said, what are they doing? I said, well, this has been a big victory then. It's a big victory.
It's what's comfortable. It's what she's been taught.
Yeah, but I told her,
So
she's now ready. She's ready to
train
go.
out.
She's ready to get past it. Thank you, Marta.
And a lot of times we're comfortable with things that don't work because we're so used to it.
That's all we know.
That's what we know. And to step outside, you know, for instance, like to step outside, you know, if you're saying like, well, you know, these people hate people and these people, you know, they don't work well with people. Well, those people might be totally afraid to walk outside of the hate because that's what they know. If you drop hate and you walk outside and you choose something else, guess what? You walk into nothingness. You walk into nothingness. What's scarier, to harbor hate, which you know all about, or to walk into nothing?
That's right.
But we have to walk into nothing to change.
To make the change. Okay, Suzanne's up. Thank you, Marta. Suzanne, go ahead, dear.
Thank you.
Hi, Lee. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Can you hear me? Good.
Well, I can hear you. Oh, there she is. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to revisit the statement, and I hear it so many times, that we attract what we are. I think that blanket statement has so many subtleties to it. It cannot be a blanket statement. And so what I find in my own life, and that's what I can go by because I know my life, is that I attract certain people who may be manipulators in my life, but it's how I respond to them. That is the clue to whether I am affected by them. So I just wanted to revisit that statement, that there's a little bit more subtlety to it.
Well, you know, I want to say, Susan, that there's subtlety to everything we said. So I'm talking in general. I'm not really trying to.
I just wanted to look a little deeper into it and make a statement, and I did make my statement.
Okay.
But we do create our own reality, but within that reality, there's a lot of subtleties.
And thanks for bringing that up, because I was going to add to that, you know, when I know Rick mentioned earlier, well, the dark side and this side. Well, there's only sides. You know, it gets into like, well, there's bad energy and there's good energy. Well, there's only energy. You know, and I'll use the example. And it's still lining up with what you said, Susan. You go to Star Wars, you know, the Jedi and the Sith are using the same energy. They're using the same energy, but somewhere along the line, those individuals or those groups made a choice to use it in a certain way. It's the same energy, you know.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say one thing that's coming from me. I just have this thought that maybe we are all living active imagination right now, if you know what active imagination is. Active imagination is what Jung came up with about letting a character in a play, or letting something visually, or letting something outside of yourself create its own reality. But we, in fact, are creating our own reality as if active imagination, and I'm probably going to go research that. But yeah, so we create our own reality. So we're living our lives as if we are active imagination. It's not outside of us, it's inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd have to know what active imagination is
Okay, yeah, I
to
have
fully
to
understand that
know a
statement.
little more. Yeah.
Well, what I find, thank you, Susan. What I find is a lot of people will not give up being the victim. They want to be the victim. It works for them. And what's so interesting, isn't it Hawkins? Yeah, David Hawkins, who has so many wonderful videos on YouTube, he talks about it in a really neat way. He talks about the secret about suffering, etc., that Buddha talked about. And Buddha talked about getting rid of attachments. Well, that can be kind of glib and it can be kind of argued about. What's that mean? Do I need to be a renunciate? He said what it really means is find out what you're holding on to, what you're attached to, what you're getting from it.
Right.
What do you get from being the misunderstood child? What do you get from being the victim of rape? What do you get from being the poor person? And people hold on to it because he calls it all juice. How you get juice from that? He says, so you don't have to think about letting go of attachments. You need to learn what juice you're getting from it, and then you'll start to see that you don't need that juice and let go of that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That ring a bell for you, Lee?
Yeah, I see it and I hear it, and we talk about that in the Bleep group, and yeah, I mean, you can't change people, The only thing that the group does is present a form for conscious expansion of consciousness. That's what we do, and you have to make your own choices, and some of those choices aren't what you would call easy, but if you want things to change, then you have to do it from the inside and then create your reality from there, outward.
What do you get out of it? It's a standard counseling question. It makes sense, yes. Well, Robert, I'd like to ask you a question if you don't mind. Robert's a good friend for a long time. He's an excellent metal worker in Massachusetts. And if you've ever seen his work, is just unbelievable. The beauty he puts into these knives. I'm asking you on purpose because I'm here talking to Lee, the saxophone player, and here I'm watching you. I was telling Liza about this tonight, that it's remarkable to me. I've known you since you were 12. How long you've been sticking with this knife making? Unbelievable. And I know you're a Pisces. Mm-hmm. That act of shaping that metal, what does it do for you? It must be fulfilling a large spiritual desire because that's what you're made of.
Well, I mean, it is probably the phrase that comes to mind is absolute intentionality, because you are directly forming some small aspect of the world very immediately. And so in that way, it is immediately gratifying as well. But there's, each person has an attunement to some activity or practice in which they can find a quiet within themselves where they can have that awareness. And this is one of my activities for finding that awareness.
So even though you still keep making knives, you're actually evolving as you're making them.
Yes.
You're becoming more aware. Do you ever find you get into a state where you're not even there, that it's just knife making is just happening?
Oh yeah, all the time, every day. Yeah.
And your wife has to come by and go like this?
Yeah, it's something.
Hamburger.
Yeah, I mean, there are so few things in life that you do so much that you're able to slip into that. You know, I mean, I'm sure it's similar for you when you're looking at a chart. You've done so many thousands of them that you're able to kind of slip in and kind of just gel in that moment, you know. And,
Well, the ones I think of are the one or two now and then, not very many, that I look at and I go, oh, and I just can't look.
yeah.
And those are the tough ones.
Yeah.
It's not because you've got all this black stuff coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you've dug this hole and you're in this hole, and asking me about the hole isn't going to help. And I had to learn to stay separate. I had to learn to stay separate.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing for me is that it's not about making knives, because I do make tools, you know, and it's like I will never make something that is solely for the purpose of harming things. It's only tools that are used to make things, or as an expression of art or culture. So it becomes this exploration of how everyone is connected through history, how we learned through history to make things for purposes that transcend that specific time they were made in, and how that's able to affect us now, and connecting to our ancestors and to our future. Because you're constantly thinking about, you know, this object that I'm making will last 200, 500, 1,000 years, and what is it going to be doing then? And I want to leave an intention of purpose that is positive over these many hundreds of
The
years.
reason I brought this up is because you were 12, 13 years old, and you were telling me, Rick, I got a whole new laws of physics. I understand now how physics works, where the physicists don't.
Yeah.
He sat there explaining this to me, and I'm sitting there going, ooh. So the reason I asked this, I guess it just happens by itself. What kind of questions do you have for Lee with the world that he sees?
Well, I mean, I'm very much in agreement with the things that he's talked about. I mean, I remember it was around, I think you and I watched What the Bleep Do We Know together the first time, like the year it came out. And, but I also remember around that time, you know, writing a couple letters to like some Harvard professors that were studying time travel and telling them that their field of study was pointless.
I could see you doing that.
Yeah. I didn't get a very happy response.
That's called a moon in Sagittarius and Sag rising.
Yeah. Yeah. 12-year-old writing to a, you know, like triple doctorate, head of a department. Yeah. But no, I mean yeah. No, I mean I'm really glad that Lee you're doing this group, and that I think it's a very tricky subject to bring down to the mainstream.
Yeah.
To a point where anyone could understand it. Because I mean I remember I am very science minded, you know, and I wanted to be a quantum physicist originally before I changed. And you know, for my 14th birthday, my grandmother got me this book.
Must be it.
It's heavy. It's a heavy book.
Yeah.
What's it say?
Gravitation. Which the first chapter on this changed how I thought about apples for the rest of my life.
Hey, Robert, thank you. I'm going to move along here for people to have questions. Thank you. Anybody else? We got about 10 minutes. If you have any questions for Lee, yes, Marcia, you're on with him.
Hi, this is really a wonderful discussion. I'm so excited tonight. I want to start my own group.
Go ahead.
Wow.
That was one of the rules that they had when I asked, what do you need to be a leader of a Bleep group? They said, well, they had 3 rules, and I can't remember all of them, but the last one said, the third rule said, if you don't like these rules, start your own group. So you can't get away from it, you know.
Yeah. Maybe one day I'll have to get your email and get some questions about how to do it. But it just sounds like a really cool thing to maybe do in my area. And
where are you?
Manhattan.
Oh wow. Well, I'm sure there's an IONS group there somewhere, but you can still have a discussion group of any sort. I mean,
right.
I think the thing that allows us to be in Pittsburgh as the Bleep Group for so many years is that we don't have a dogma. We don't, you know, we find that people who come say, oh, I was always looking for a group like this because I thought I was so weird. And all you guys are, you know, people I can talk to, you know. And we basically don't make judgments in that way. And we just present information, and we're here as a resource for expanding consciousness.
What I got to say to you, Marcia, is if you think you're the one that thought of, I got to start this group, you're mistaken. You've been handed that one. Woo! I'm gonna be a member from Pittsburgh.
And it feels so great to hear you talk and everyone tonight talk about intention, because I've experienced intention in a really good, warming way in many experiences in my life. And a lot of them were through body work. I was a massage therapist for 30 years. And another one was through working in the theater. I worked in the theater for a long, long time. But behind the scenes mainly.
That's okay.
But the intention of making the play or the musical be as successful as possible, even down to shining the little shoe. You know, and the intention of that just felt so good.
And that's what people feel. You know, I think intention is a big part of it. Choice is a big part. Choice before intention, of course. And I mean, you can walk around every day and have an intention and have your main intention, and the world just changes for you. I mean, you know, and then you can see from that point how you create all this reality. You know, I've had somebody in the group basically, you know, who was visiting relatives, and the relationship wasn't so great. And I said, she basically said, how can I do this? I said, it's going to be your intention. And it has to come from here. It can't be something that you recite and you say you're going to do. It has to be who you are being. And it has to be second nature.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Perfect. And so many people miss that point. And that's the point. I've told the group this before, a lot of times if I have to go somewhere, and let's say, for example, I like this person and I'm not fond of this other one, and they're both there, I set my intention when I'm going, that I'm going to do my best with everything, and I'm going here intentionally.
Right.
And if I go there unintentionally,
right.
If I go there unconsciously, I am directing a Mack truck into my lane. I am. You got to be very aware. We're getting a lot of feedback somewhere. Maybe it's me. I'll mute myself. Go ahead, Lee.
No, I mean, I agree. You know, you're and you'll be amazed. I mean, I've been in situations where I'm going like, oh man, this is going to be not so great. And then I set my intention, and basically I have to do a meditation and then set my intention and be who I am, because, you know, the culture will pull you out of who you really are. And part of who you really are is your intention. And I will go in and be a little stressed about it maybe. And then I'll get into my intention and everything will work out like perfectly. You know?
Oh man, this culture is so wrong. I feel so sorry for women that have to face this constant barrage. I see women who are so beautiful, and they're putting all kind of makeup on top of it, and they're already beautiful.
Yeah.
And the pressure that's on them to look so good and perfect all the time. I know I worked at a women's college once, and I was there at the time when they were about to go co-ed. And the number one reason that the women did not want to go co-ed was because they didn't have to worry how they looked. They didn't have to do all the makeup. But anyhow, we've got an awful lot of things that are just.
Yeah, that's the cultural. It's a pressure that the culture puts on you, and once you step outside that, again, you have to have your intention with you, and you have to have it be who you're being, and that's going to keep you going. Because outside the culture, and you also have to take responsibility for what happens at that point. All of it's not going to be great, but all of it is going to be part of your expanding your consciousness.
Okay, Alethea, did you have a question?
I did.
That's where the static's coming from. But go ahead, you're fine now.
Okay, I just want to know, you brought up a good point about how, the culture has an impact on our awareness. And for so many years, like even since my childhood, I was so aware and in tune with, myself and with God and everything. But because I was raised, in religion and everything, I suppressed that, and just years and years and years of suppression. And so now within the past, 2 years or so, I finally learned to embrace that. And I sometimes feel guilty that I pushed all of that down when all this time I could have been like cultivating it. So I just want to know.
You had to do that.
I'm sorry, let me mute because you
weren't ready. What's your question for me? You said I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, my question is, can I ever get back? Can I catch up? Can I get back to where I probably would have been by now had I cultivated that throughout my life?
Well, I'll tell you this: you're where you're supposed to be.
Right.
There's nowhere to get. You're where you're supposed to be. And you did one thing on your own. You embraced your history, and one of the ways to get through your challenges and your history is to embrace it. Because the next question is, and you always have to ask questions, and you ask yourself, and you ask the universe, and you'll get answers. And the question is, if you had a chance to live or change your life or live another life, would you take this one or would you take another one? Think about that. Everything that you did up to this point creates you. You basically love you, just like you love the world. Some of that stuff is pretty rough that you have gone through, and challenges that we've gone through. But in the real big picture, you probably will not give any of that stuff up because you won't be you anymore.
You did everything exactly as you had to do. Go ahead, Althea.
And to be completely honest, I think the shift came when I lost my mother. It'll be 2 years ago in February. And that was the final person who I was no longer, I didn't want to freak her out or scare her or embarrass her or do anything like that. And come to find out now that I've been connecting with her through a medium, and she said that, she was proud of me, but it was just like I got free once she left me because, despite the pain,
right.
I didn't have anyone, I didn't care what anybody else said. Like I felt the worst pain of my life. So nothing else matters. And at that point, that's when I became free. And, ever since then, I've just been really, just trying to embrace and nurture, my spiritual self.
Mm-hmm. And if you're able to go back and you're able to communicate with your mother, you'll probably find out that she already knew that.
Yeah. And Lee, some of the research I've been doing, and I don't want to sound glib because I got to do a lot of research, but I've seen a lot of evidence that people leave when they know you're going to be okay. Your dog would leave when it knows you're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Even if you weren't getting along, they leave when they know they're no longer needed. I think it's very much your case, Alethea, but I'm not positive. I got to do a lot more research, and it's a touchy subject. Well, anyhow.
Well, can I say one thing on that, and then we can go?
Certainly can.
When my mom passed, I told her I would be okay because she said that was her main concern. She told me because, I'm single, no kids, only child, so she was really afraid But she said, as long as you keep doing what you've been doing in life, you'll be okay. And I said, Mom, you can go. I'm good. I'm all right. So that, just to validate what you said, I know for sure that was the case.
And one thing I want you to remember is if you went through the third inning and didn't score, in the fourth inning, in the fifth inning, in the sixth inning and didn't score, you don't have to go backward and put a run in those innings. Just keep going forward, because you could score 10 runs in the ninth inning and win. It's part of the ego. It's part of the over-dependence on the intellectual part of our mind, just think in such a linear way. And one of the good things that Liza keeps pointing out to me is we keep thinking that we're on this linear path, and we are not.
We're not.
Quantum physics shows you that. We are on a spiral. We are on a spiral that's ascending. And if you're on a spiral, half the time you look like you're going back down.
Right. And again, on the path of enlightenment, on your path, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to get to.
You're already there.
There's no goal. Enlightenment and awareness happens all the time. We have these epiphanies from time to time where the light goes on. We go like, oh, wow. But that's the time you are mostly paying attention. That's the time you are mostly conscious, but it happens every second. If you ask a question, the answers are there constantly. But that one time you pass a TV commercial and the guy says, oh yeah, call your mom. You go like, oh man, nah, it was everywhere. You just saw it on the TV.
The answer, the clearer you can state your question, the clearer your answer will come. Well, we're going to wrap it up, and we want to give you a great big. Yeah, you have a question there, Robert?
Yeah, where can we find the 6-hour version of What the Bleep Do We Know?
The 6-hour version is called oh man, it's a gold cover. It's the random version of it, which means it has a lot of deleted scenes, a lot of deleted animation.
Wow. And
you can play it a bunch of different ways. You can set it on random and play it. You can play all the scenes that have certain subjects in it. It's really complicated. And What the Bleep Do We Know actually was the first DVD that I actually bought that was a double-sided CD. But DVD. A lot of people don't know that, but the original is a double-sided DVD.
Well, go watch it next week. We're having a final next week. Books closed. Thanking Lee Robinson very much for a wonderful evening and so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
it's called Down the Rabbit Hole. That the 6.5-hour version is called Down the Rabbit Hole. It's goldish.
And we're going down the rabbit hole. We're going to come back up, and we're going to inspect Marcia, see how she's doing in New York. Lee, thank you so much.
All right, thank you for having me. Nice to meet you.
On YouTube tomorrow.
Hopefully we'll see some of you at the meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you.